This program is brought to you by Rogers Xfinity, connecting you to more of what you love. Visit Rogers.com for more details.
Hi everybody, welcome to Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television Grey County. I'm Fred Wallace along with Denise Reed, and just like that we're at episode number 38. Today our host charity is Habitat for Humanity, and we'll be talking about the great work that Habitat has been doing in our broadcast region for many years, almost 40 years now. Our guest today will be Sam Bryant. Sam is from the Cooperators, and we'll be talking to Sam about his professional work and also talking about how you can leave a gift for charity. And when we get to our featured video today, we'll be spotlighting something that's really kind of timely, and that is the Bruce Peninsula Hospitals Foundation, because we're at that time of the year when the population on the Bruce Peninsula certainly expands. Denise and I, before we meet our guest today, Sam Bryant, we always like to talk about living well, giving well, where we came from and what we're about in terms of our concept.
Yeah. We've, like you say, what are we, 38 show? And we've had lots of varieties of accountants and lawyers and financial advisors and insurance and the charities, and trying to offer, our people watching, what is it that we can live well and give well. And we talk about volunteering, we've talked about that as part of a gift, but also monetary gift as well. And Willpower.ca is what we've always encouraged to look into and see the possibilities. And Sam's going to give us an idea today of how we can maybe even work a little more on a legacy gift, or what we can do for our family or our community. Go from there.
Sam Bryant, welcome to our program today. One of the things that we always talk about is talk to your professionals, be it a lawyer or an accountant or a financial expert or an insurance planner. Tell us about your work.
Well, I kind of straddle the world between financial planning and insurance planning, working for the Cooperators. We're mainly known as an insurance company, but I am the financial planner with our office. So I work with my clients on investment plans as well as estate plans, focusing sometimes more on life insurance, other times more on investments, and so I think I'm well placed to talk about the topic today.
Yeah.
But yeah, we've been hard at work for the last few years, trying to kind of change people's perceptions about what Cooperators is all about.
Right. Well, because that is the one thing I was saying. Cooperators insurance.
Yeah. Exactly.
When I say it, Cooperators insurance, as Cooperators. So a lot of times I do just think of the insurance. Now you're from the Wyerton office. Is that okay? That's. And are you from this area?
Family is. I grew up in Kitchener.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
I'm from Waterloo.
Okay.
So there is a difference.
So
Kitchener,
I'm the only good one in the group.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you go.
So how did you end up? Was it family that brought you back here? Or?
Yeah. So my family all moved back up here, and I joined them recently because I wanted to buy a house, and can't really do that in Kitchener.
Yeah, it's tough. So why insurance? Why financial planner? Why did you pick this field?
Well, I like helping people. I mean, as corny as that sounds, I was previously with a nonprofit beforehand, and it wasn't really that big of a leap to switch over to financial planning. I mean, it's a little more individualistic, looking at case-by-case basis rather than big societal issues, but it's all just helping people.
Tell us about your experiences with the nonprofit. What was the group and your observations about your time there?
Yeah, I worked for the Heart and Stroke Foundation, uptown Toronto, for an organization, and within the organization called Ride for Heart. It was a big thing. We took over the Don Valley Parkway, the Gardiner, shut down the city. Everyone hated us for a day. It was a lot of fun. Everyone, the participants, we raised a lot of money. Unfortunately, COVID really did kind of take a toll on that.
Yeah.
We pivoted and got through it, but it was clear that I think I needed to move on, and I did.
Yeah. And so we've talked about in lots of our shows volunteering, and volunteering turning into the passion that you have, which then can turn into maybe I would like to give to this charity. And when you talk to people, your clients, do they say to you, hey, Sam, I want to give to this charity? Or do you approach them and say, have you ever thought?
Well, on occasion, people will ask, generally they're putting their toe in the water. Let's look at charities, what options there are. But generally, if someone wants to give, it's to a cause that speaks to them, and they'll have an idea of, at least the area that they want to look into. So when you think about, where you want to donate as a donor, there's really a pretty long run up to before you decide where to allocate your funds or your time or whatever you are donating. And hopefully you're not just jumping into the first organization you see, because everyone's doing great work, but people's approach, different organizations' approaches to giving and to impact are going to be different. So you have big national organizations like Heart and Stroke, like where I was, but then you do have more local iterations, right? So you have Habitat for Humanity. That's a large organization. I think it's American originally, but its impact is very local. It's very it's house by house by house, right?
Yeah.
And so that's another angle to consider when you're looking at where you want to donate. Okay, that you want to donate to for example, a cancer charity. Well, is it a large organization? Is it research? What do you want?
How much we've talked
Hospice?
about? Yeah, how much of that donation goes to, administration? How much goes right to the charity? Does the money go locally? I think people are really passionate about local. I mean,
Yeah.
when you're doing, I was on the hospital foundation board for Own Sound for 9 years, and even though we had different hospitals, and people say, "Oh, I want to keep it in Meaford," or "I want to keep," So you got to figure out where you want to go with it. And so then, do you? What's the difference? Like you have your life insurance, that's a vehicle that we can use.
Well, I'll be honest, yes, it is. And if we're talking about major donations and you're a corporation owner, there are some really advantageous things from a tax perspective you can do with life insurance that are pretty complex and beyond the scope of what we want to talk about here today.
Right.
Might be a 2-hour show, right?
Yeah,
Sam?
Well, you'd be asleep by the end of it. But more commonly, if you do have a life insurance policy, and for whatever reason the reason that you purchased the policy no longer applies. Your children are all rich. You won the lottery, whatever it is. You no longer want to leave the money to who you have named as beneficiary. You may decide to name a charity instead. There are implications from a tax perspective, whether you want to sign over ownership of the policy to the charity, because that's also an option, ownership of the life insurance policy. Or just name directly and take advantage of the tax savings through your estate. But that's a good segue to something else I wanted to talk about today is kind of a common misconception, especially in the context of, I'm a financial planner, I'm talking about charity. There's a lot of kind of cynicism that comes into that area where people, you see it online, sometimes you hear it. The rich people, they just give to charity to save on taxes. They just want the tax advantages. And, there are tax advantages, and
Certainly.
it's wise to take advantage of those. But you'll never get more value back than you would have just kept had you just kept the money. You're never going to get more out of a donation than just keeping the money. So while those advantages are important and something that you'd want to consult with a financial planner, if you are making a sizable donation, to make sure you're making the most of those advantages, I think it's important that people start kind of reconsidering that cynicism that there's no way of kind of gaming the system and getting more out of it than you would have otherwise.
Right. Yeah.
Is this a conversation in your experience that you have a lot, or is it something that just kind of pops up periodically?
It's more periodic, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, I'd love to say this is something I talk about every day, but it's not.
Not the reality. And it's the same when you were talking, Sam, about the run-up that people have in terms of getting their eyes open to a charity. And again, I started with investing probably in my 20s. Never ever thought about charities back then, but now suddenly it might not be front of mind, but it's in mind.
Yeah, and so nowadays there are a lot of different tools you can use for that run-up. I should know this because I'm on this show. It's Willpower.
Yeah, Willpower.ca.
Yes. Where
There
are we
we are.
here?
Yeah, so they seem like a great organization, and I like the idea that they're pooling all these charities' resources together because again, having worked for one of these large organizations and talking to donors, people don't want to see their donation dollars going towards advertising or marketing,
Yeah.
but it is an important part of
Right.
It's
of any
necessary
charity, right?
in order to get out
A
to
necessary
people.
evil,
Yeah.
you might say.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
just to interject here, we're sponsored today. Our host charity is Habitat for Humanity, and they make a very valid point, or a very stressful point, saying that 100% of every dollar donated goes to the build. And I think when you, as a donator to whatever, it's nice to see your money at work when you do make that donation, Sam.
Yeah, I was just talking to their representative earlier.
Lisa.
Lisa, yeah, and
Yeah.
she explained their model. It's a really good one.
Yeah.
But even beyond willpower, I mean, something else you can use nowadays, and I'm sure everyone's sick of hearing about this, is AI. Something like ChatGPT, something like that, where you can get really specific and ask questions about local charities. And you want to do your research afterwards, because sometimes that information isn't always reliable on those things, but it's a really good tool as
Yeah.
well.
I mean, I've always thought of it as natural for me to be a volunteer. I mean, I've done that my whole life, okay? And it just seems, everybody should be thinking about that. But not everybody does. And so maybe they aren't passionate about something, and then they have to think, okay, well, where can I donate? And where should I look? If they don't have an idea. I mean, everybody, you have your charities, Fred,
Yep.
I have my passions, and that it might not be the same. No matter what, every charity is going to be happy if you're willing to share. Share.
And they're going to know their priorities a lot better than you're going to be able to guess them. So that's another little piece of advice is consult with the charity. Once you've decided on who you want to donate your time to or your money, consult with them. Give them a call. They'll be happy to hear from you. It'll make you feel good to talk to someone that's so appreciative.
Yeah.
And they'll help you to figure out what the best way to kind of make the most of your donation.
And we'll talk about the
Yes.
good feeling as we progress. This is Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. Our guest today is Sam Bryant. Sam is from Cooperators Insurance, located in Wyerton, or Sam is located primarily in Wyerton. We have a showcase video coming up. Our featured sponsor today is the Bruce Peninsula Hospitals Foundation, the good work that they're doing in Lions Head and in Wyerton, in both North and South Bruce Peninsula. So stay with us for the video, and then we'll be back with more with Sam Bryant today as we continue on Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County.
Hi, I'm Brian Taylor. I'm a board director with the Bruce Peninsula Hospitals Foundation. The mission we have on our foundation is to provide exceptional rural care for the folks on the peninsula. And we do that by raising funds for our hospitals in Lions Head and Wyerton. So the foundation exists to bridge the gap in funding that is missing from the government. So the government provides funds for capital, for building a new building, putting new equipment in, and for the operating expenses of the hospitals, like paying the staff. But maintaining that equipment and adding new equipment and training staff is not covered by government funds, so we have to do that ourselves. So if we want to keep our hospitals current and keep the technology up to date and safe and efficient, then we have to raise the funds to do that. And along with that, if we don't have good equipment, we're not going to attract good staff. You need to look at it this way. If you or one of your loved ones, your friends, your family, have to come to emergency in Lions Head or in Wyerton, if we have state-of-the-art equipment and people who are skilled at using that equipment, you'll get really good care. So just look at it as if you're supporting yourself or somebody in your family or one of your friends. Would you want them to go to a place where things aren't up to date, up to speed, and the staff aren't energized and keen to look after you? By donating, you help support that cause.
I'll just ask questions that you would want.
Welcome back to Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers Television, Grey County. I'm Fred Wallace, along with Denise Reed. Our guest today is Sam Bryant. Sam is with the Cooperators Insurance, and Sam is located in Wyerton. Before we get back to charitable giving and leaving a gift and an enduring legacy and that sort of thing, we also want to thank the Bruce Peninsula Hospitals Foundation for being our showcase video today. And like I said off the top, it's pretty timely because the population, as you know, Sam, is about to, if not explode, then certainly expand on the Bruce Peninsula. And we hope that nobody ever has to use the hospital services at Wyerton and at Lions Head, but it's so great to know that they're there, and their reputation is really, really sterling. So again, congratulations. And to that end, they're running a 50-50 draw that climaxes during what I used to call Rotary Village Fair Weekend. It might still be called that, I'm not sure, but over the civic holiday weekend, they'll make the grand prize announcement. So if you can, pick up a 50-50 lottery ticket, and you'll be supporting Bruce Peninsula Hospitals Foundation. Denise, back to our program today, and Sam Bryant is our guest.
Well, we have our notes always before we get those. And I was reading about a testamentary gift. I have no idea what that is, so if you could tell us what that is, and should we be doing it? How do you benefit from it?
Well, yeah, a testamentary gift, testamentary just means through your will. Okay. So this would be a legacy gift, would be what they call it in the charity world. So the difference really, there isn't really much difference. It's money to a charity, whether you're living or not.
Okay, so whether you're living or not, yeah.
But from a financial planning perspective, there are pretty significant differences in what you can do with a testamentary gift. So one thing to consider is, everyone wants to give as much as they possibly can once they've decided to give, right? You're not going to say, you're not going to cheap out on something you care about. And that makes it a lot easier once, not to be glib, but once you've passed away, you don't need to worry about things like retirement planning, long-term care needs, et cetera, et cetera. So you know that you are making the maximum impact. From a tax savings perspective, you can write off more of your income from your final tax return than you can when you're alive. So there are a lot of big advantages there. And it's also just something that you can hang on to for your whole life. So whether that testamentary gift is something you decide on, way at the beginning of your first will, you know who you're leaving your legacy to, or something later on, you do have that kind of in your back pocket to make you feel a little better about things. So another way of leaving a legacy to a charity is through life insurance, which we touched on a little bit. I think you had a guest on recently talking about that specifically, so we probably don't need to go into too many details.
But it's an option.
But it's
an option, because I think you already mentioned it in the show today that when we get our life insurance policies, and I know we started, I think, right when we were married, my husband and I, 43 years ago, we're looking and saying, oh, well, you're my beneficiary, you're my beneficiary. Well, you know what? Now, that many years later, maybe we don't need to do that anymore. Maybe that can benefit a charity, better so used than what we don't need to do each other.
Yeah, I, not to keep harping on about this, but I think for most people, the big decision is where you want to give. There's not really much more to it unless you're looking at a very substantial gift. And then you really do want to be careful about how you give. So I'll give an example. Life insurance is what it is. You have a benefit amount, and that's the amount. But for something like a stock that you bought,
BCE.
Yeah, sure.
There we go.
43 years ago.
You mentioned that before.
Guess why I'm bringing up BCE.
So, okay, you spent $100 on this stock. It's now worth $1,000. So you think, you know what? This would be a great way for me to give to charity. I don't need this stock. It's grown great. So why don't I'll sell it and I'll give it to charity. No, that is the wrong way of doing it. Okay. What you want to do, because when you do that, you're paying $900 capital gain taxes.
Okay.
Well, you're not paying $900, but that $900 is taxable.
On taxable.
What you can do instead is donate that stock directly to the charity. So you get to donate that full $1,000 value. The charity gets a full $1,000 value, and you get tax credits on the full $1,000 value. So it's a win-win-win.
Right.
And so those kinds of things Obviously, $1,000 isn't the biggest gift that the charity could get, but once you start looking at those larger gifts, that's where you want to be a little more careful about how you do it.
Okay. And I think we've talked about this before, but I think it's a point that needs to be reiterating. I give my BCE stock to Bruce Peninsula Hospital Foundation. Do they keep it and let it grow, or do they need to cash it immediately?
Well, that's up to them.
Okay.
They will probably cash it out right away. I don't know. Yeah, it depends on the charity.
Yeah,
Right.
I think I remember that, and I think that when I don't know whether it was
Was it
Will
Kelly
who said-
Kelly Hafling,
or maybe
maybe?
it was Kelly.
So
Yeah.
our shows are blurring together.
Yeah,
on us.
I think she was said that they would take it right away and cash it in.
Okay.
And I like that. I mean, great for the example, because it gives you our viewers an example of that. You know, then there's the no taxes and the charities. I mean, that's once again, you'd have to look into a charity. Will you accept these? You know, because I mean, you'd have to be a charitable organization, you know, instead of, well, just minor hockey or minor baseball. It would have to be
a registered charity.
Yeah, a registered charity. So yeah, I think that's a great idea. And we talked about in others too is, you know, I guess we never thought about when we were young doing this. But so when you have a young couple, let's say, come in, they're going to start their portfolio or whatever. Do you say, hey, you know what, might be a good idea. What do you have? Where do you want to go? And maybe as you're looking into the future of charity giving or philanthropy or...
To be honest, no.
No.
It's
Not when they're young.
It's a tough world out there for young people, and that's not really my place to I'm happy to encourage them if they bring it up, but
yes, okay.
Absolutely, yeah. But
So that's the way the street runs.
exactly.
Yeah.
I think people later in life and maybe have a little more money than they need for their retirement. That's maybe something I could bring up gently. But you know, it is something that you know, you want to be careful and make sure that the clients lead the way on.
Well,
Family
and
decision.
we talked about you know, the teams of. I mean, we talk about a young couple that, you know, they don't even have a will. You know, so if they don't have a will, like they think of that as later on in life. I mean, but it is. We've encouraged our kids to start investing, you know, young, and they don't think about the charity part yet. But if they invest properly, then there might be more there
At the
in
end
the
of the line.
future.
Yeah. I mean, it's all about kind of setting yourself up for success in the future and keeping your options open. And that's financial planning in a nutshell, and that goes for charity planning as well. So, you know, even if you decide, I know I want to give to charity, I know I want to do it this year, but I don't know who I want to give it to.
Right.
We also do now have an option here in Canada called a donor advised fund, a DAF. And what that is you donate to this fund. It usually has to be a pretty substantial donation. So we're talking about 10,000, 100,000, a lot of money. But you donate to that fund. It doesn't go to charity. It sits in that fund, grows tax-free, and you advise the trustee later on where you want grants to go. So it's kind of like your own little foundation.
Right.
But it doesn't have all the, you know, overhead and the headache of actually establishing a foundation and the millions of dollars that you would need for
Right.
that.
Okay.
So it's a really great way of doing that if you're kind of on the fence of, or maybe you have a lot of different causes that you want to continue to donate to.
Right.
I'd never heard of the DAF,
No.
so thank you for bringing that up.
Not a lot of people, to be honest, I hadn't heard of it before I started doing research for this.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's not a very common
Well,
thing,
Sam,
but
thanks
it's
for
maybe,
bringing that up.
maybe it's going to become a little more common.
Sam, you were also kind of conscious you didn't want to bore people if we talked about taxation, but there are benefits to taxation, and if you can, without putting Denise to sleep, tell us about the benefits that people can derive from giving to charity in their will.
So yeah, I don't want to get too in the weeds, and when we're talking about, again, major gifts, then you do want to consult with a tax expert, a financial planner, and a representative of the charity that you're donating to. But for most normal people, I don't give $10,000 gifts to charity because I can't.
Not yet. You're
I
trying to
can't
buy a
afford
house, you said.
Yes.
Someday.
Yeah. Right.
Exactly.
Right.
However, I do give, and I don't really consult with my wife about pooling our resources. Where I'm going with this is the way the tax credits work in Canada is that the first $200 of gift that you give in a year, you get a smaller tax credit for.
Right.
But after that, it's a little more.
Yes.
So what you can do is if you and your spouse both give, you can pool your gifts together when it comes time for tax season and get the maximum.
Okay.
So say you both gave $200, you got $400 of gift.
Now you might get more.
Hope you're not glazing over here.
Yeah,
I'm talking
no,
about
not
numbers.
yet, no.
She's still with us.
Because I'm looking, I mean, I've experienced that, and being asked as a member of our community, would you be interested in donating? And, giving the levels of, and of course, the higher the level, the more tax credit, the tax break you're going to
Exactly,
give
yeah.
this, and you'll get 50% back in your tax. So there is that there, and it depends, how much. But I like the way you said, okay, talk to your, the organization, talk to that. I mean, we've talked about in before teams. Like, some people need to talk to you as their financial advisor. Maybe they need to talk to their accountant. Maybe
I would hope so, yeah.
Maybe they need to talk to their lawyer as well. So working as a team, which I'm sure you do on probably a fairly regular basis.
Of course, yeah. So, again, to touch on that kind of cynical angle, I am talking about getting the most for yourself out of a charitable gift, which isn't really the spirit of things. But if you think about it, what works out to your advantage usually also works out to the charity's advantage.
Yeah.
So my example of donating the stocks directly, not only does that give you more of a tax credit, it also gives the charity the full value of your donation.
Yeah.
And even if it is just straight up saving money in a different way, well, that's more money for you to give in the future. So,
Yeah, I mean,
it usually works out that
way. I think I'm giving from my heart and that. And then afterwards, you find out.
It's the subtle difference between you and I, right? You go from the heart, and I'm thinking, well, there's an advantage to this, which doesn't make me a bad person.
No.
But
not at all.
There are benefits. We were going to have to leave our conversation here, Sam, but before we let you go, tell us the priority things that people should do in their financial planning, along with leaving a gift for charity.
Well, I think, to speak to your perspective, Fred, I think put yourself first when it comes to financial planning. I know that's maybe not the most touchy-feely way of putting it, but you really do need to look out for yourself when it comes to retirement planning and longevity risk. People are living longer and longer, and so the last thing you'd want to do is give away, the last few years of comfort to a charity. I'm sure the charities wouldn't want you to do that either. So do be careful about overgiving and overspending, and plan for that. But once you've hit that point where you're taken care of, well, then you're looking at estate planning. And when it comes to estate planning, that's when you really want to speak with an advisor, speak with a charity, and make something of your legacy. I think it's a great way to.
And how do people get in touch with you, Sam?
You can reach us online. We're Derek Young and Associates in Wyerton, 519-534-3200. But yeah, myself, any other financial planner with a CFP designation will be well placed to help you out and advise you.
And Derek Young, who pulled the shoot on us today. So thank you so much for being on hand today, Sam. This is Living Well, Giving Well. Thanks for joining us today on Rogers Television, Grey County. On our next edition, a fascinating conversation with Will LeGrand and Maria Riggin. They're representing Huron Shores Hospice. Our thanks to Habitat for Humanity being our host charity today. And again, our thanks to the Bruce Peninsula Hospitals Foundation as part of our Spotlight video. Sam, thanks again for being on hand. For Denise Reed, I'm Fred Wallace. Thanks for joining us today on Living Well, Giving Well on Rogers TV. Great.
Connect with us by visiting our website or email us at comments@rogerstv.com.
You're watching an interesting local show on Rogers TV and you want to know more. That's when you head to rogerstv.com. Our website provides more information about our programs, our hosts, our schedule, and about how you too can get involved with Rogers TV. Visit us online at rogerstv.com.
Are you a passionate content creator ready to expand your audience reach? Do you have unique stories, captivating hobbies, or special interests that deserve a spotlight? Rogers TV is here to amplify your voice within the community. We offer you the platform to broadcast your content to a wider audience.